From news anchor to new life, confronting racism in broadcasting. So, we talk to Black women on this channel about experiences in toxic jobs across a range of different professions. And what you will find is that there are parallel experiences across professions, across locations. So, today we're going to talk to Marley, who talked about her experiences in the newsroom and what she experienced in the newsroom in terms of racism. So as you're watching this conversation, if you feel like there's parallels, you might be sitting there thinking, oh, me too, me too. And the reason we have these conversations is so that you know, as a Black woman, that you are not alone in being in a toxic work environment. Also, that you know that you have options as a Black woman, that you don't have to stay in a toxic job, even if it might feel scary to leave a toxic job. And I'm not telling you to up and leave, okay? My hope is that if you recognize you're in a toxic job, that you start exit planning. You start planning for what you're going to do in terms of replacing your income and your benefits, your health insurance, and your retirement. If you need assistance with that, we are having the third annual Job Liberation Virtual Summit coming up May 1st through the 3rd. So you see that as my background. And also, the banner will be going across the screen in terms of registration. So early registration is going on now, and it ends March 31st. So if you want to get your ticket before the tickets go up, March 31st, we have over 20 speakers, Black women speakers, teaching you how to exit plan. The summit also this year is not only for Black women who are leaving toxic jobs or trying to leave toxic jobs, but also for Black women who've been pushed out of the job market, because we've seen what's happened to Black women in terms of the push out of Black women. So Marissa Price and I are been very intentional about how do we also provide resources for Black women who've been pushed out of the job market. So we really are thinking about how do we help us find different ways to replace our income, whether it be going into another job and or to create your own business. So when we think about exit planning, it is to have things in place so that you are prepared, okay? One last thing about the summit, it's a privacy consideration that we have is that summit participants are not on camera. Only summit speakers are on camera, okay? So I want to make that announcement first. So if you don't know me already, I'm Dr. Kamani. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I've been licensed for over 20 years. I'm a toxic job survivor, but more importantly, I'm a toxic job liberator for Black women. And as I kind of mentioned before, I'm the co-founder with Marissa Price of the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women. Again, it's coming up May 1st through the 3rd. So for the past 2 years, we've had over 300 Black women in attendance. So again, information is going across the screen. So I'm excited to have Marley here with us today. So Marley, can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Dr. Kamani. Hi, everyone. My name is Marlie Hall. I'm a news anchor turned nomad. I've spent the last 25 years in television news as a news reporter and anchor for some of the biggest names in news. But I decided in 2022 that it was time to make a pivot. And now I travel the world. So right now, as we speak, I'm in Bangkok. So hello from the future. It's morning here. And I'm just really encouraged that I'm living this life and that I'm free. And I hope other women do the same.
Wow. So 25 years in broadcasting.
That's
That's a
right.
long time. And I'm glad you said that because I think a lot of us put so much into our career and the thought of leaving just feels like, wait a minute, I've invested so much time or this is my dream job. I'm not leaving. So I know we're going to get into that as we talk about
Mhm.
this. So Marley, can you tell us, because I don't know anything about the broadcast world. So can you tell us about some of the racism that you encountered in the broadcast world?
Oh, absolutely. And we all know that racism is present across industries,
True, true.
but some of the things that I've encountered in my career personally, for example, I found that some of my fairer skinned coworkers would get some of the best assignments. Um,
Mhm.
and in the news industry, we're called upon to work extreme hours, sometimes around the clock, sometimes having to get on a plane and go to a location and report live at a moment's notice. So the
Mhm,
job in and of itself is already high pressure, high
mhm,
competition, and quite challenging. But I found that for talent, meaning reporters and anchors of color, it's even more challenging. And so, in addition to not getting the choice assignments at times I would be called upon to work even more extreme hours. So
mm.
instead of 15 hours, let's say, then it would be basically around the clock. And sometimes when I was on assignment, no sleep at all.
Wow.
And I found that after putting in so much work and having such a work ethic, I really wasn't seeing the gains that I thought that I deserved.
So you did all the things that you were asked to do, but then you didn't get, like, any rewards for it.
Well, I didn't get the rewards that I felt like I deserved. Being in the news industry on air as a news reporter or anchor is a prestigious
Mhm,
position. And
mhm,
I managed to get that far, of course.
mhm,
But there
mhm,
are levels. And as I
mhm,
said, I noticed my coworkers reaching those levels a lot easier.
mhm. And I'm wondering also, like, in the news world, do they also have, like, mentorship, and do they have things like that? You can Oh, Cynthia said she can't hear me. Can everybody else hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Marley?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. In the audience, I see Cynthia, you said you can't hear me, but anybody else, can you tell me if you can hear me? I hope you can hear me. Um, so in the news industry, does it work by like mentorship? Like, how do you get career advancement in that field?
Well, back in the day, there were sort of mentorships, fellowships, internships, and opportunities for journalists of color, or ones that were specifically set aside for journalists of color as special programs. So there are a number of journalists of color who advanced that way, came into the industry that way, got promoted that way, of course. So there's definitely that in the past, but as of late, I mean, we know that DEI programs are a thing of the past. It
Right.
They're out of the public sector and the private sector followed. So it's a tough situation for sure, especially for Black women.
Got it. So I'm wondering, have you seen that it was like a pattern where it seemed that Black people or Black women seemed to get only so far, and then that was basically how far you would go? It
Right. It's
shouldn't
an
be for
issue of
you and your peers.
longevity. Exactly. I find that we do get the jobs because
Mhm.
most of the time, for me personally, I was hired because I am Black
Mm.
or because I'm a Black woman, because
Oh.
there's essentially a casting call. So stations are looking for a particular thing, a particular race,
Mm.
a particular gender to round out their newscast because
Interesting.
it is a thing in news that it's not politically correct to have a newscast or people in the newscast that are not reflective of the viewers. So it's almost a necessity to have at least one Black news anchor or reporter. At least it was back in the day. Things
Mhm.
are probably changing now. So
Mhm.
we get the jobs, but it's a matter of keeping the jobs. And it's also a matter of advancing. So typically in the news industry, talent is hired on contracts. So that contract can range anywhere from a year to 3 years typically. But the real challenge is getting your contract renewed.
Okay. And how is it that you get your contract renewed? Like, are you more likely to get it renewed based upon what criteria? Have you noticed that it's easier for other people to get their contracts renewed? What have you noticed in the field for Black women?
Well, it's supposed to be based on job performance, of course.
Mhm.
But I've noticed for Black women that it doesn't always work that way. And for me in particular, I found that there were very few second chances or grace because
Mm.
in the news industry, it's very high stress. You're supposed to perform at a certain level and be
Mhm.
almost perfect, at least on the
Mhm.
air all the
Mhm.
time. But of course, there's the human factor and no one is perfect all the time. But I
Mhm.
find that for me personally and for other Black talent, um, when those errors or missteps occurred, there really was no grace or second chances.
Mm. So I heard you say that there's kind of like this kind of expectation, or like, oh, we're looking for a Black person to kind of round out like our team, right?
Mhm.
So it almost seems like tokenism in some ways. So I'm wondering, if it's set up that way, is it very rare to have more than one Black person within the newsroom or in the, I don't know, as a broadcaster? Is that rare?
It's not rare. I mean, there's usually at least one Black male and one Black female. So that
Mhm.
usually occurs. For there to be more than that, I would say is rare.
Okay. Okay, so it's very limited spots.
I believe so.
Okay, and what does that look like in terms of the, experiences of Black women, let's say specifically for Black women, in terms of, competing for different roles? Because it sounds like there's a limited number of spots for Black women, and
Mhm.
so how have you seen or how have you experienced that in relation to having a limited number of spots available, and you have a number of Black women who are trying to get those spots?
Mm. Well, it's competition, of course. For
Mhm,
example, if I, for most of my television career, had an agent, and
mhm,
so my agent would receive the casting call, and he would then assemble a reel with all the Black women that he represented and
mhm.
sent off the tape, and they simply pick one, and that's
Okay.
typically how it works.
Okay, okay. And how was the, I guess, relationships amongst the, Black women within the broadcast industry? And I'm asking this because the issue of, like, all skin folk and kinfolk, like, comes up all the time on my videos.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if you encountered any of that, in your experiences as well.
I both. On both ends
Mhm,
of the spectrum I've experienced. I would say it's a bit complicated because we're in competition with each other, because
mhm,
it's such a high pressure, high stress work environment. I find that within a news organization, sometimes the alliances among Black women are not there.
mhm,
Certainly, I've experienced networking and fellowship with other
mhm,
Black anchors and reporters who were women in other news organizations.
mhm,
Um, for example, there's the National Association of Black Journalists and other
mhm,
groups like that where we come together and compare notes and share stories. But I find that, yeah, it's a mixed bag because
mhm,
you don't really know whether the Black woman that you encounter within your news organization is friend or foe. And I've
mhm.
experienced both. I've
Ooh.
got friends and foes.
That's difficult, that's difficult. So you did mention that there was one situation you had in a newsroom that was so egregious that you had to take legal action. So are you able to share with us, without violating any privacy or anything like that or names, what exactly happened? And the reason I'm asking you this too is because many people ask me questions like about my toxic work environment and why didn't I file a lawsuit, and a lot of different questions. And I always say that filing a lawsuit is very stressful. It's not easy to file a lawsuit. There's a lot of things to take in consideration. And for me, I was dealing with something else. I was filing another lawsuit about something else. So I couldn't do two lawsuits at the same time. It was just too much, right? So can you share with us what was happening at that newsroom that was so egregious, and maybe your decision-making process for actually filing the lawsuit?
Right. Well, to be clear, I felt I had to retain a lawyer, and I
Okay.
did.
Okay.
And there was actually a settlement between myself and the company in order for them to avoid legal action. But in my mind, that's a win because that rarely happens. But for this job in particular, it was at a local news station where I was highly recruited or heavily recruited to be the host of their morning show.
Mhm.
And so I did, in fact, do that. And I moved to a new city and became the host. And it was classic pet to threat. So
Ooh.
as soon as I got there, it was a process of making my life extremely difficult and pushing me out. And it was so blatant and bad that I didn't even recognize it at first.
Hmm.
Um, so I found that as the host of the show, I'm essentially a partner with the executive producer in shaping the content and the vision of the show, but I had no input whatsoever.
Hmm.
I found that my executive producer, who was a white man, would almost sabotage the show in order to make me look bad.
Wow.
Um, as I said, I was the head of the show, the host of the show, but
Mhm.
I was called upon to go out in the field and report stories, shooting them myself. So meaning go out with the camera and shoot my own stories, do my own interviews, and then come back and edit it. Do
What?
basically
As
the
the
job,
host?
yes, the job of a
Wow.
production assistant. So they kind of just, I had the title and the salary, but they were making me do tasks that were
All the
below
work.
yes, below my pay grade, let's say.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that was, another thing. When I finally took 1 week of vacation because I knew that, I knew this, or I felt the situation that I was in, they invited a white host to replace me for that week and basically turn the show into a circus. Like, the show was bland and boring. All my suggestions were not taken into consideration. And as soon as I stepped out and the other woman came in, they had live guests. They had a literal marching band in the studio, cooking demonstrations,
Oh
like
my
the
gosh.
works, in order to spike the ratings to
Mhm.
prove that my ratings when I came back were not as good. And
Mm.
so that was one tactic that they used. And as I said, it was just so blatant and in your face. It's almost like sometimes when it's so obvious, it's hard to see. And
Right.
so I remember that one day I was working late and I was the only one in the newsroom. And the janitor came in to take out the trash, who happened to be a Black man. And
Mhm.
he looked at me and he said, "Wow, it's so good to see one of us here." And then
Mm.
at that moment, it clicked. Oh, I'm Black. And I was like, okay, this is what it is. And I didn't expect that to happen because coming from New York, which is a very diverse city, I was going to another market that was also a large market and quite diverse. So I didn't expect it to that degree. And in
Mhm.
fact, my first performance evaluation, which came about a month after I was hired,
Mhm.
was surprising because I sat in a meeting and after a month of my work to basically form a basis for their rating or evaluation, they completely trashed me and said that my work was not good enough. Meanwhile, I am the most experienced person on the team, more so than my executive producer. That my performance wasn't good enough. The ratings weren't good enough. My weather presentation wasn't good enough, which was another thing that they forced me to do tasks that were outside of my expertise. So they said, okay, you do the weather too. And I was like, okay, so is a meteorologist putting together the newscast that or the weathercast that I'm reading? No, they
What?
had weather maps with like cold fronts and low pressure systems that I could not read. Like, I have no meteorology training at all. So of course my newscasts were not up to par. And because they forced me into a role that I basically was not qualified to do and then judged me on that. And
Mm.
so, yeah, there were just a lot of egregious things. And so in the end, it felt like every time I stepped in front of the camera, there was like a gun to my head because it's like
Mm.
at any moment, at any point, one misstep, one wrong word, and I'm out of there. My executive producer actually came to a point where as I did the weather, he would count the number of times that I said wet if it was a rainy day. And so he had a little tick marks. And he said, well, today in the newscast, you said the word wet 12 times. Uh, Meanwhile, there were weather
You talk about
cut-ins.
micromanaging.
There were weather cut-ins every 15 minutes or so in the course of a 2 or 3 hour show. So obviously there would be some repetition and there's only so many ways to describe rain. So, and then, for example, there was a portion in the show where they would show a shot of the sun rising that was live and then had to narrate and talk over that. And he said, every day you say the same thing, the sun has risen and it's morning. And I said, well, that I'm not repetitive. That's nature, that's God. And if the sun doesn't rise one day, I'll be sure to report that too. But it just goes to show that every little thing was completely nitpicked and micromanaged.
Wow.
And also during the show, there's an IFB, which is internal feedback, which is basically an earpiece where my producer is speaking to me and is supposed to be the one guiding me through the show, saying, turn to
Mhm.
this camera, weather's coming up next, then throw to this piece, etc. But because this producer was so hostile in nature that he sought to sabotage me at every turn. So that voice in my ear was extremely unfriendly and not helpful, let's
So you're
say.
trying to do your job and focus, and you got something in your ear,
Mhm,
basically.
mhm.
Oh, that is horrible. That is
Yes.
horrible. I'm just commend you that you were able to concentrate.
Yeah, it was
That is
extremely
outrageous.
difficult, and
Wow.
every show felt like, trauma, and
Oh,
so it was at that point that I knew that it was just so egregious, and it got
mm.
to a point where this particular executive producer would basically retaliate against other members of the news team who spoke to me. Meanwhile, I am the
What?
host of the show. So
So he was
so
trying
then
to isolate other people
right,
from
I was
talking to you.
completely isolated, so
Wow.
in his presence, no one would speak to me or interact with me.
Oh my gosh. Marley, oh my God. I'm so sorry you had that experience. That is horrific. How long
Yeah.
were you there?
I was there for almost a year before
Oh,
I negotiated my exit.
oh my gosh. So let's, if it's okay, can we unpack a few things? Because that's
Oh,
just
yeah, of course.
horrible. Okay. Um, so you were heavily recruited. Who heavily recruited you? Not the executive producer, right?
The general manager.
The general manager. So
Mhm.
did the general manager know what was happening to you?
Oh, absolutely. He was also a white man and was part of the meetings and the so-called, performance evaluations
So why do you think that he heavily recruited you?
because the the viewers were Black. Most of the viewers for that
Ah,
particular station, because of the shows that they aired, most of the viewers were Black, and so they essentially needed a Black
okay,
face to front the
okay,
show.
okay, okay. So they brought you in, and it's so interesting. One of my Spelman sisters, I got on my Spelman shirt, she talked about sometimes Black women are brought into organizations and they're brought in for slaughter. That's
Yeah.
basically what happened. So they needed a Black face. They brought you in, but they were coming for you from the beginning.
Yes, yes, and
Wow.
another interesting dynamic that happens a lot of times in news is that in the hierarchy of the newsroom, the executive producer basically has oversight over the show, including the host. So in a way, we're partners, but he's also I report to him. But
Mm,
on-air talent typically makes significantly more than producers. So I'm sure that it might have been difficult for him to take that I had the visibility and the larger salary, although technically he's above me in hierarchy.
uh-huh.
And and that's typically the case in news organizations that the talent make more than producers. And for some white folks, that's just hard to take, I
Right,
suppose.
right, right. So you're a Black woman, you
Mhm,
have more experience, and you make more money.
mhm.
So it was just like, oh, I gotta basically put her in her place. It was so like to me, it was so typical of like that plantation mentality of like, oh, this Black woman thinks she's uppity or she thinks she's this. So we got to do whatever we can to put her in her place. And then it was like this a very hostile work environment. So telling other people they couldn't talk to you. I mean, not
Mhm.
only is that so high school, but that is so hostile to feel just so, and you're having to do all this extra work. So where were the other people to do the meteorology, the weather stuff? Like, where were the other people? They didn't have other staff there to do the
Um,
to do
it
these
was well, for the newscast in particular, it was a pretty small crew. I would say
stuff?
about
Okay,
5 people. The larger news station itself had more employees, but as
okay.
far as the news department for that particular show, it was a small group of people. So about, I would say 6 of us total.
Wow. Okay. And so then you got saddled with most of the work and you're trying to like juggle all this stuff because you were brought in, you want to do a good job, but it seemed like no matter what you did, it was never good enough.
Correct, and it was
Never
a
good enough.
very, very hostile environment. I mean, it was a misery to go to work every day,
Oh,
and at that point, that's when I decided that, you know what, this I just cannot let this pass and this cannot continue. And it was very difficult for me to make that decision because it's not a small industry, but it's a small industry.
Mm,
So people in television news, they know the stations, they know the people who work at them, and
mm,
so there was a chance that it could have affected my future opportunities.
mm,
So I really thought long and hard before I took that step, but I
mhm.
just felt that it was just so egregious
Yeah.
that it could not, I could not let it pass.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm glad you did. So when you think about and you talk about what the experience was like, you talked about you dreaded going to work. Can you talk a little bit more about how it impacted you being in that environment? Because I think it's important for Black women to hear what the experience is like, because if they're hearing this, they may be able to connect to it and be like, "Oh my God, that's happening to me too." So can you share a little bit more about what was it actually like for you as you were going through that experience?
Hmm. It was really tough. I mean, I really leaned on my friends and family members a lot and vented and downloaded to them, but
Mhm,
it just felt hopeless.
mhm,
And for me, it was so personal because I wanted to be in the news industry so badly. I wanted to
mhm,
be a news reporter, an anchor. Like it was the only thing that I ever wanted
mhm,
to do in my life, and I really love it. I really am convicted about giving voice to the voiceless, bringing stories to light, shining a light on injustice. And that's why I got into the news industry. So it felt really personal because
yeah,
it's something that I love so much and that means so much to me. Um, and in addition to the really hostile and traumatic environment that that particular newsroom had become, it
yeah,
was just felt really sad and
yeah.
hopeless, and which is why I felt like I had to take action and retain a lawyer.
Absolutely, and I think for a lot of us, we can relate to that, Marley, about having a dream about something, like you're drawn to something, there's a reason, you're mission driven, and then you get into the situation or a particular job, and you're like, "Oh my God, this is the absolute nightmare." And it's like, did I work so hard for this to get to this point? So you got to a point you were like, this is wrong. This is wrong. And so as you were going through that process, were there people around you who were saying, you know, Marley, I think maybe it might be a good idea to seek legal action, or was it something you thought about on your own? How did you come to the decision about, I think I need to consult with an attorney?
Mm, well, I did mention it to some of my peers in the
Mhm,
industry,
mhm,
um, because so many Black women can commiserate with my story. There are
mhm,
so many Black women who are news anchors and reporters and have put up with so much, continue to put up with so much, deal with
mhm,
so much, and the turnover for us is very high.
mhm,
So we're hopping to different stations and networks constantly, and
mhm.
so the experience isn't unique to me, but it's something that a lot of us go through, and it was, yeah, it's hard, and it's really sad that Black women in the industry have to go through that in most
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah, yeah. And so as you were thinking about seeking legal counsel, right? Um, what were some of the things, because you said that you were thinking this industry is small, and so there's a risk that if I move forward, that other people might find out about it. Were there other considerations that you took in terms of deciding to move forward?
Mm, no, that was my one and only consideration because it was just so clear to me that
Mhm.
that there needed to be accountability.
Okay, okay.
That was the only thing that gave me pause is my future prospects in the industry.
Got it, got it. Okay. And so then you got an attorney, and the attorney helped you in terms of getting a settlement. And
Yes.
uh-huh. And what was it like for you when they knew that you were taking legal action at the job?
Mm. Well, at the point where they were aware that I had retained an attorney, I think there was a shift,
Mm,
and that particular executive producer was put on notice, perhaps, and I found out that he actually left the station just a few weeks after I did. But yeah, so I did notice that the treatment then became different, distant, but not as hostile as before. And
Um,
also at that point, HR was involved as well.
okay, okay. And with this person being so obnoxious with like the micromanaging and all that, did it kind of get in your head at any point and make you kind of question yourself in any way or trip you up in any way? Because that's what he was trying to do. Did it have that effect on you in any way?
At first it did, yeah. I took it very personally, and I thought
Mhm.
that, well, it's me. I need to be better. I need to study
Mhm.
these weather maps,
Mhm.
apparently, and I
Mhm.
need to recognize a low pressure system. But so I studied more. I practiced more. I tried to be better. I tried
Mhm.
to not repeat the word wet as many times.
Which is so
Um,
ridiculous with the rain.
um, so
Uh-huh.
yeah, I did. I did try to improve
Mhm.
on the notes that they gave me, which were all invented.
Yeah, yeah. And at what point did you realize that this was gaslighting? Like this was just it was impossible. Like they were just really out to get you. As opposed to, and again, I think that, and I'm so glad you're sharing this because I think a lot of us do the same thing, Marley, that when we get feedback, because we are so high performing that we want to do a good job. So if we get some feedback, we're like, oh, well, then I have to work harder. I have to do these other things. And it gets to a certain point, you're like, wait a minute. You know what I mean? Like, I am doing a good job. Let's look at the source of the data. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
what is this really about? It's not really about my work, it's about something else. When did you have that realization that this is not about my work?
Hmm. Pretty early on, I think in
Mhm.
that first evaluation that went completely left
Mm,
and didn't go as I expected it to. In fact, I felt attacked. So
mm.
I think it was during that first evaluation that I was like, okay, something is up and it's just not right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And after that job, did it affect your views of being a broadcaster in any way? Did it still taint your dream?
Mm, I wouldn't say it tainted my dream, but it kind of, in a way, it made my skin tougher so that when I
Mhm,
moved on to the next job, I was like, okay, I can handle this because I've been through it and worse. Um, that is the best way to get your to get your skin tougher to develop
mhm,
more resilience, but it happened that way. But I
mhm.
think that was the biggest thing. I almost became used to it.
Oh, used to it. Can you share more about that? What did you get used to?
That it's different for me, and that, for example, when I worked at one news network, there were a number of correspondents who were um, same position as me, but um, I found treated differently, and
Mhm,
I believe they could see it as well because journalists are very astute, observant, intelligent people, and
mhm,
they notice things that are not said and or things that are not just. And so I
mhm.
believe my white peers noticed it as well, but continue to take advantage of their privilege.
Ah, okay. So nobody came and said to you like, "Hey, Marley, like this is not cool. I've observed this." Nobody. They just took
Oh,
advantage
no.
of the
Yeah,
privilege.
yeah, yeah.
Mm, mhm, mhm. And what would you say? I'm just curious. I just thought about this. So because it sounds like there's a lot of things that happen that many of us outside of the newsroom or broadcast we would not really know about, right? So for Black women who might be interested in going to broadcasting, what kind of things would you want her to know to look out for or to be aware of? Or even, I don't even know how she, what she could do to kind of, I don't know, protect herself in this situation
Hmm.
or these situations.
Protect yourself. That's a tough one because
Yeah.
I think in this era of news, I think it's a little bit worse than when I was in the news because
Mhm,
of the one lack of DEI and also because newsrooms everywhere and news organizations are experiencing layoffs, and Black
mhm.
women are the first to go. So
Wow.
I think it's a difficult environment for us right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But but if I had to give a Black woman who aspires to be a news reporter or anchor advice, I would say be true to yourself, because I think that's one thing that I regretted, is that I did everything I was supposed to do. I was very conformist.
Mm,
I had very straight hair weaves down to the middle of my back. I
mm,
was impossibly thin. I was a size 6. I had perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect makeup, and I had to, in fact, at some places I was called Black Barbie, which is extremely racist as I think about it now. But I say that to say is that I had to maintain this aesthetic that suited them. But if I had to do it all over again, I would just be unapologetically me.
Marley, who called you Black Barbie? Ah,
At a
I
few
was like,
different jobs. At a few
what?
different jobs, actually.
Really?
Hmm.
Were these other Black people?
Well, both. But I believe that they meant it as a compliment, actually, or at least that's how they positioned it.
Wow. It's really like you were a caricature, like you weren't a real person.
Correct. Correct.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And I believe that was part of the reason why I rose to the level that I did, is that there was a certain amount of pretty privilege in
Uh,
that as a Black person, I had an aesthetic that was palatable.
interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on that, please?
um, yeah, there's a certain expectation of how you should look, and in my era, braids and natural hair of any kind was not okay for Black women. No one did it, and in this day and age, it's different. I believe, like, what year was it that New York City decriminalized Black hair? That they said that employers could no longer discriminate on the basis of hair. I believe that was 2020 or 2021. So that was pretty
Mm,
recently. And so I feel like after that, you saw Black women on air with different kinds of hairstyles, protective hairstyles, braids, and
mhm,
wash and goes or whatever. But
mhm,
before that, that was not a thing. Everyone
mm.
had straight hair.
So you felt an expectation to fit into a certain mold.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I definitely had to look a certain way. I had to
Mhm.
maintain a certain size, in order to keep my job,
Wow.
and also
Okay.
because I was highly visible and
Mhm.
therefore highly scrutinized.
Would anybody say anything about your appearance?
Um,
Nice Black Barbie?
there were times where, um, a news director would say, "Well, why don't you go meet with the makeup artist and get some tips about, what you should do with your makeup and hair," or something like
What did that mean?
that my makeup and hair at the moment was not pleasing, I suppose. But
Wow.
but that was, yeah, that was the thing that
Mhm,
happened.
mhm. Did you notice that that happened more so with you, with Black women, or was that across the board for women?
Mm, I think women experience it in general more than men, but I think for sure it's a thing with Black women, because
Okay.
there's an expectation of a certain aesthetic.
Yeah, yeah. So these are things that Black women going into journalism are to expect. Is there anything that they can do to protect themselves if they go into choose to go into this field?
Mm, how can you protect yourself? Well, I think one thing that I wish I did as well is to have my own thing and have my own platform just as I do now.
Mm,
I think in this day and age, it's more possible than ever to build your own audience,
mhm.
and I wish that I did that then, or started that then. And so that would
Okay,
be my advice to women who are coming up in journalism, or television journalism in particular,
okay,
is to have your own platform, your own voice, and your own audience, because
okay.
it's completely possible.
Yes, yes, yes. And so we talked before about, becoming a broadcaster was your dream. And so can you walk us through how was it that you came to the point where you said, I'm going to pivot from this? This is my dream and I'm going to pivot. And how did you come to the realization that it's time for me to walk away?
Hmm. I think life happened for me in particular, and that really gave me the push that I needed at the time,
Mhm.
because I started my life of travel in 2022. So that was just after the pandemic, where I found myself laid off for a period of time. I was also recently divorced, no children. So I found myself in a position where I was very unencumbered.
Mhm.
And me having the work ethic that I have and coming from the industry that I did, so you, the girl on my shoulder was like, "All right, what are we doing? What's the plan? What's next?" And as I considered what would be next and thought about what my next job would be, and pursuing or continuing my news career, I just was filled with dread, honestly,
Oh,
and I could not imagine myself doing that or
wow.
working within a news organization, because it just it felt too bad,
What
honestly.
was the dread about? What was contributing to the dread?
I think that as I was working in the news industry, I had become so accustomed to it, almost to the point where you numb out and you don't let certain things sink in, because you
Mhm.
still have to perform, you still have to
Mhm.
do your job.
Mhm.
And it's such a visible job that, you can't really have a bad day. You always have to be on, you always have to look a certain way, sound a certain way, and essentially just be flawless. And
Mm.
so I think I did not fully emotionally absorb what was happening, and that when I had a moment to breathe, when I had a break, a pause, I think at that point I started to process and really appreciate some of my experiences and the things that I had been through.
Mhm.
And when I was confronted with the prospect of returning to that kind of job, it just it didn't feel good. And
Mm.
at that point, I said, well, now it's time to do what I want to do and what I love to do. And another thing that happened during that time frame is that my best friend passed.
Oh, wow. Sorry.
And
Wow.
she sorry, I don't
Yeah,
want to get emotional, but
I'm sorry.
we were exactly the same age.
Mm.
And um, she was a voiceover actor, and
Mm.
which is what I do currently as my remote gig. And so
Mhm.
she was highly inspirational to me for that, in addition to being a wonderful human being and my best friend.
Mhm.
And yeah, so when she passed, that was when I was fully convicted that it was time to live my best life now,
Mm.
because um, she died of breast cancer,
Oh, wow.
but she was diagnosed at stage 2. And as I said, we were exactly the same age. So at the time, we were about 46. And so when she got her diagnosis, it almost inspired and motivated her. So
Mm.
she was writing a book. She was pursuing her career aspirations. She had several high profile voiceover gigs. She was the voice of the Soul Train Awards, of BET, of Nickelodeon, of so many big name brands like T-Mobile and Old Navy. She was just talented and brilliant. And she also started working out and eating right, and looked better than she had ever had since I've known her. And I'd known her 15 years before she passed.
Mm.
So to see someone who was so vibrant, so beautiful, so full of life, and had so many dreams and was working
Mhm.
so hard to make them happen, but
Mm.
um, was not able to,
Yeah.
that was inspiration for me. A reminder that life is fragile and
Yeah.
short, and
Yes.
that um, yeah, we have to make ourselves happy now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if something fills you with dread, then that's not the life that you really want for yourself, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
put things into perspective. So, and I'm so sorry to hear about that because it sounds like it was such a loss, such a loss. And Marley, how were you able to pivot? So you were like, this is not the life for me. So how did you pivot into voice acting and other how did you do it? How'd you do it? Because some people say, "Yeah, I started doing that," and then people are like, "Well, how'd you do that?" Like, how'd you do it?
well, job number one was to make my own money and find a job that I could do remotely,
Mhm.
that was location independent, and that would provide me with the money that I needed to pay my bills and to also travel.
True.
And my first thought was voiceover because that was something that I had always aspired to do. In fact, that's how my friend, her name is Toy, that's how Toy and I met, and then became friends for 15 years until she passed. So I was familiar with that world. Also, as a news reporter and anchor, I talk on the mic all the time. And so I had that skill that was transferable. And so I said, okay, this is my thing. And I went about the business of learning the craft and learning the equipment and the software and how to get clients. And I did exactly that.
Wow, that is such a beautiful example of utilizing your transferable skills. Because when we think about our jobs, we all have transferable skills. You know what I'm saying? So when we're at a job, we're thinking, oh, I can only be this, I can only be that. But there's so many skills we utilize at our job that we're able to transfer. And so it's important for us to think about that as Black women as we start exit planning. So you were like, wait a minute, I can do this and I can start making money. And you start making money remotely as you were
Yeah.
traveling.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And
Okay.
that
Okay.
was yeah, and that was so liberating to know that, I don't need the man essentially to survive, to pay my bills. I
Mhm.
am completely independent.
Liberated.
And that yeah, I travel the world. I'm in Bangkok right now.
Wow.
So, um, yeah, that has provided so much confidence for me because I realized that I can do it. I can do it, that it's
Mhm.
totally possible.
Yeah.
And if you know how and you know what steps to take, um, it's not even that hard, honestly.
Right.
So,
You just have to
so
have a plan in place.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And as Black women, we're highly capable, highly skilled. The work ethic is on point, and we can pivot. We can pivot, and there's always
Exactly.
something we can do independently that will produce income.
Exactly, exactly. And that's definitely something we're gonna be talking about in the summit is how to pivot and look at our transferable skills, identifying those. So Marley, when you were able to identify, okay, I can do this, I can get out of here. Do you regret in any way walking away from the job or the newsroom? Do you regret that?
I don't. I don't. I I regret that I didn't pivot sooner, actually.
Oh, mhm,
I do miss the work of journalism. I
mhm,
miss covering stories every day.
mhm,
I miss learning about something new every day to in order
mhm,
to cover it. I miss the social activism part of it and being able to reach people, touch people, give voice to the voiceless, and
mhm,
to highlight certain issues that need to be highlighted.
mhm,
Also, as a Black anchor and reporter, there were times when I was able to pitch my own stories and do my own stories and bring a
mhm,
story to light that wouldn't normally have been covered or
mhm.
known. So that part of it was always very rewarding. So if there's anything that I miss, it would be that.
Uh-huh. I'm so glad you answered that because I also want Black women to know that, even if you leave a job that you may have thought was your dream job, that you're able to pivot and do something else. It's a transferable skill. And leaving sometimes you create a different life. But I've never met a Black woman that I've interviewed who's ever regretted leaving. Not one person. If anything, everyone has said, I regret not leaving sooner. Right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it's so funny, right? We always think, "Oh, no, I can't leave," but once you do that, right? But there's another question I want to ask you, Marley, because this comes up too, and it came up for me.
Mhm.
So as you thought about, "Okay, I'm gonna walk away from the broadcast world," were there any fears about I know we know how to pivot, right? But were there any fears as you thought about, "I'm gonna leave this world that I'm used to?" Any fears in making that pivot?
Mm, my my only fear was that I I couldn't make voiceover work, that
Mm,
if for some reason it failed, then what would I do?
mm.
Um, but it did work. It absolutely worked, and there are so many other things that it could have made work. Because as a journalist, I have writing skills, I have research skills, um, I have production skills. I can shoot video. I can edit video. There are so many things that I could do. I chose
Mhm.
voiceover because um, I had inspiration to do it, and because it's something that I love as well. So,
Yeah.
and it happens to be something that is primarily done remotely, and that is very doable in terms of a profession and making money.
Uh-huh. So you had plan A about the voice acting, but then you also had backup plans too,
Oh yeah,
which is
absolutely,
very important. Okay. So what does
absolutely.
your life look like now? So you said you're in Bangkok, right?
Mhm.
So how does your life look compared to how it looked when you were a newscaster?
Oh wow, completely different, night and day, night and day. Well, first of all, I have so much more free time, but I have decentered work. I'm not a part of hustle culture anymore. I do voiceover really on a part-time basis. I mean, not
Mhm.
more than like 15 or 20 hours a week.
Wow.
But in addition to voiceover, I started to add some additional streams for more money and more security. So now I do dividend investing. So I draw monthly income from dividends
Hmm.
in addition to the voiceover. And I
Mhm.
also started coaching and content creation, and that's in the beginning stages, but that will grow as well.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. So, wow. Okay. So can you tell us more about the coaching that you do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So my mission is to be free and to help other women be free. And
Mhm.
especially in these times that we're living in, it's
Mhm.
the political climate, the economic situation,
Mhm.
racism. There are so many things. So I feel like it's necessary
Yeah.
for that alone, but
Mhm.
it's the freedom. I'm at a point now where I could not even imagine having a boss. I could not even imagine submitting to a system that I know is rigged against me. I could
Ooh,
not imagine putting my fate, my career, my finances in the hands of people who don't like me and don't want to see me succeed. That to me is insanity
right.
when I can do so much better for myself.
Okay. Okay. And so the type of coaching that you offer is for whom? And what do you coach people to do?
Oh, okay. So basically, I coach women to reinvent their life through travel. So, in addition to travel being a good alternative to life in the US currently. It's also my passion. It's something that I have enjoyed doing since as long as I can remember. And so it feels really good to fulfill that passion and also to help other women do the same, regardless of their motivation for wanting to spend more time outside of the US. So that includes slow traveling, as well as perhaps making a home in a specific country abroad. So I help women make a plan to do that because I'm living it and I want to impart all my knowledge and all my tips and tricks to other women who aspire to do the same. And most of all, just to be an example, to provide inspiration that it can be done and
Mhm.
there can be beautiful results on the other end. And all you got to do is start making the plan and give yourself permission and normalize it. Also, I think a lot of women or people in general don't imagine living a life of travel or spending
Mhm.
significant amounts of time outside of the US because it's
Mhm.
just not something that people do. But
Mhm.
I think through my YouTube channel, showcasing my life and the places that I've been and my experiences there, I hope to provide inspiration for other women to show them that it's completely and totally possible. And it's a beautiful life.
And can you share with the audience, it's in the description section, but can you share with the audience the name of your YouTube channel?
Sure, it's my name, Marley Hall. That's it.
Okay, okay.
That's
And
it.
I'm wondering also, Marley, two things. So when you talk about for women to think about, traveling and, going abroad, I would say that there's been a lot of messaging about how unsafe it is, to go abroad. Can you address that issue?
Mm, well, I'm from New York City. How unsafe is it to live in New York City? And I think many of us live in places that have higher crime rates than many, many places abroad and
Mhm,
anywhere that we might move to
mhm,
abroad. Um, life is a risk in general. You take all the usual precautions that you do in your everyday life, and I
Mhm.
think that's sufficient. I don't think another country is any riskier than where you currently are.
Okay, okay. And I'm wondering, as you walked away from the broadcast world, was there any part of your identity that you had to say, I'm releasing that? You know what I'm saying? Because it was a dream of yours. I'm wondering if you really saw yourself as I'm Marley. I'm Marlie Hall, the newscaster. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
was there a part of your identity that you had to address or say, this is not a part of my identity anymore? Was that
Um,
part of the letting go too?
I feel like my identity is the same. I consider myself a journalist. I'm an award-winning journalist, and whether I'm employed or not doesn't change that in
Mhm.
my view. I
Okay.
think me personally, I have changed and evolved. I'm a different person now. I look drastically different, and the life I live is drastically different. But in terms of my identity, I found that it was other people who wanted to change my identity, other
Mm,
people who assigned me less importance or less value because of my change in status or position. And
mm.
that was interesting and also very telling.
Can you elaborate on that, please?
Mm, I've found that in certain circles or with certain friends that um, I was afforded less respect or less interest, or kind of like, why aren't you doing that anymore? Like a little bit like, are you crazy?
Oh,
So
wow.
that sort of thing. Because it's a
Wow.
job that is really difficult to get and keep, and
High
in most
status?
cases, yeah, high status, and in most cases, well paying.
Mhm. So I think that's important to also identify that sometimes when we shift and we make changes in our lives to prioritize what we want in our lives, again, there's other risk involved too. That sometimes it might mean shedding people that we associated with, but really checking our circle because maybe those are not the people who we want to continue to associate with if they are so invested in seeing us in terms of that role and they can't really support us in terms of our new where we're going.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Or
Yeah.
perhaps they were only there because of
Oh,
my
good
role.
point. Good point. Absolutely, absolutely. So, as we are starting to wind down a bit, if there's a Black woman who's watching right now, and you said something that was so poignant to me. You said, I cannot imagine working for a boss right now and somebody or people who are or organizations that I know who do not have my best interest in heart, who are really trying to undermine me. If there's a Black woman who's watching this right now, Marley, and she can relate to anything you said today, particularly that quote you just said, what words of wisdom can you offer to her?
I would say pursue financial autonomy. Find your source of income that you produce, create for yourself that can
Mm,
be consistent and regular. Even if you have a job, find a way to make money without the man, without the
mm,
system. I believe that is just survival in this day and age. Um, as we always say in our circles, these jobs ain't loyal.
no,
And
they're
so
not.
we got to be loyal to ourselves. And
So
I feel
true.
like at this point in time, it's really about survival.
Yeah.
And also it's very, very doable. It's very doable. As
Hmm.
Black women, we're extremely resourceful. We're
Hmm.
really smart. We know how to make things happen.
Hmm.
We go to work every day and provide so much value for our employers. We can certainly do it for ourselves. And
Yes.
not only does it provide freedom, it provides relief from racism. Like, I can give myself privilege even if I make less money. As
Hmm.
a voiceover actor, or the way that I do voice acting, I bring in less than my salary as a news reporter. But as a
Hmm.
news reporter, I wasn't in Bangkok chilling like I am now.
And you had
So
no life. Basically, you were waiting with the janitor. You know what I'm saying? The janitor was
right.
coming and you were still working.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. My
Yeah.
life is so much richer now.
Mhm.
And knowing that my source of income is tied only to me and my efforts. I'm completely in charge and responsible for that. And gladly. and gladly, because I realize now that it's so doable, and it can give you privilege, it can give you freedom, and it really can make your dreams come true. And it's usually something that takes a little time to build, to set up. But that's why I believe that all Black women should start that now if they haven't already, job or no
Agreed.
job.
Agreed. So a shameless plug, that's when you need to come to the summit, right? So if you have a job or not, you've been pushed out, you need to have an exit plan. So just like what Marley was talking about, you need to have ways of knowing how to replace your income. Even if you still have a job, you need to, because we look at these jobs, they're so unstable. And we both follow Stephanie Perry, and Stephanie Perry says these jobs ain't loyal. These jobs aren't loyal. They're not. Because we can see what has happened with Black women. Over 300,000 Black women, poof, the job is gone. So we need to take our power back and get prepared. Get prepared. So exit planning, it's not like you exit plan that's going to make something bad happen to you. Exit planning is just to help you get prepared. Okay. So we have to throw that out. Just like the saying, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. We need to always be prepared. And Stephanie Perry is one of our speakers, one of our confirmed speakers. So we're going to be talking about that during the Job Liberation Virtual Summit. Again, the early registration ends March 31st. So get your ticket before early registration ends. So Marley, that was so poignant what you said about really taking our power back as Black women, because we have so many skills and resources and so many different things, but I think we get so wrapped up in, doing a good job for certain people or organizations, even when these organizations are really trying to harm us and they're doing things to harm us and undermine us. So how do we also start creating things for our own, maybe in silence, right? Like Harriet Tubman, you know what I'm saying? Like start building our own multiple streams of income aside from the job, so that if anything happens to the job, we have some type of backup. I think that is so important, especially right now, because we're seeing what's happening. So we need to start getting more prepared. So I'm going to start reading the community chat, and then we're going to start winding down, everybody. So I see some good evenings. Good evening, everyone. That's great. That makes it safe for all attendees. So talking about the summit. So the summit, again, privacy consideration. The summit attendees will not be seen on camera. Also, you can attend anonymously where your name is not seen. Okay, you can change your name in the platform. Okay. So we talked about the sound issue. Okay. Oh yes, do the weather too. Wow, I'm so sorry. Hi everyone. Hey Marissa, good to see you. That was so crazy. How many times you said rain or wet with the rain?
Yeah,
That
the
is
weather's wet. Yeah.
insane. Oh my God. Oh my gosh. So sorry to hear, but I'm not surprised. So sorry that you had to go through this, Marley. This community is so supportive. I love it. They're
They
trying
are,
to
they are.
yes, they're trying to psychologically break us in these jobs. It's horrible. I agree, Marissa. I agree. Constantly setting us up to fail and then pointing the fingers outward to us. It's so dehumanizing and ego damaging. I'm so sorry for your experience, but absolutely believable. Yep, that's exactly what they do. Sounds familiar. The situation has happened to other women broadcast professionals, except if you don't have a friend whose name begins with O. Oh,
I I
okay,
knew
wait,
it before
took
you
me
even
a
said
minute,
"oh."
Cynthia, but I got you. I
But
got you.
that's a valid point as well. Sometimes we see that, the high profile positions that are given to Black talent are because that particular person is already wealthy and famous. And yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, Marissa, we're brought in for slaughter. So my Spelman sister who said that it's Dr. Monica Cox. Okay. Good evening and blessings. Blessings from Charleston, South Carolina. Hello. The premise of your shows, Dr. Kamani, are so affirming because most people close to me thought I was making up the issues and were trying to make me the problem, re-traumatizing. I'm sorry to hear that, sis. Well, first, I'm glad that you're able to feel a sense of support here. And that's why I do these videos, because I want Black women to know that we are not making this stuff up. This stuff is really happening to us, and it's happening to many of us. And it's sad. it's sad sometimes that people around us don't understand. And instead of learning more about our experiences, sometimes they could say, oh, well, maybe it's something about you or whatever. And that's when we have to say, you know what, I'm going to not tell certain people about what's happening to me if that's the response we get, because we don't need to be re-traumatized because we're already traumatized at these jobs. So sometimes we have to just not tell certain people about what's happening to us, unfortunately. But I'm sorry that's happened to you. Yes,
Yes.
I agree, Cynthia. We saw that happen with Joy Reid, Melissa Harris Perry, among others. Yes.
Yes.
Marley, this is absolutely correct, and that is supported by a growing body of scientific and social research. Discrimination against Black women in media environments remains far too prevalent, and the cumulative impact can be deeply harmful. When bias, exclusion, or harmful treatment occurs repeatedly, it can contribute to significant psychological stress and emotional strain. Research has shown that sustained exposure to discrimination and inequitable treatment can affect mental health, emotional, I think you were saying like emotional health too. I agree. Marley, thank you so much for your honesty, transparency, and humility. You are pretty, which is an
Oh,
additional attribute you can add to your other assets. Wishing you
thank
all the
you.
success. That is so sweet. That is so sweet.
That really is. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, Marley, I also want to say thank you so much for your transparency and, sharing about, um, some very painful experiences in your personal and professional life that really contributed to you pivoting and now creating the life that you want to have. And I think that you are just such an amazing model for Black women about what is possible when we step away from a toxic job where people are trying to undermine us, and how we're able to use our transferable skills and create a life that we want. I mean, it's just like a beautiful example of that. So I'm so thankful that you chose to come onto this platform and talk about it with this community. And yeah, it's just so amazing to see where you were, right? Because a lot of people who put that much time into a career, they would have just stayed there, right? They would have said something like, I've been here this long, I'm not going to leave because this is what I fought for, or they're not going to run me out, or anything like that. Did you ever have those thoughts like they're not going to run me out, or I fought too hard to be here? Did
Oh,
you ever?
yeah.
Oh,
Of
you did too.
course, of course. I have sacrificed so much. I mean, the type of
Mm.
work life I had, most people cannot even relate to. Like, I didn't even have work hours. I was just on call 24/7.
Ooh,
I had what they call a go bag. So at any moment, I could get a phone call. It could be 3 o'clock in the morning, and they'd say, head to the airport. There was a shooting in this church in South Carolina, and you got to go cover it and be there. So, and
wow.
that happened on a very regular basis. I mean, it could happen every week or every 2 weeks.
Mm,
So, yeah, and many times I would be working for 15 hours straight, sometimes more, and
wow.
sometimes in some very, extreme conditions.
Ooh,
Because if I'm out covering a blizzard or a snowstorm, I'm really not inside, and every 10 minutes, I'm outside doing a live shot, um, for the station. So, in that way, it can be physically challenging as well.
wow. So, Marley, because I would love for you to share. How
Mhm.
did you work through? Because I've talked on my channel and then particularly like on my private videos for the members only, working through that you're not going to get me out of here. I'm not going to let you win, that mentality. Because I think a lot of us have that, right? As Black women. How did you work through that? How did you let that go?
Well, I rationalized it like this. I mean, yes, I did put up with a lot. I did sacrifice a lot, but the rewards of having my own business and my own source of income are so much greater than what the path that I was on in the news industry and being subjected to a certain kind of treatment.
Yeah.
So I actually feel like sky's the limit for me now. And I feel like I haven't stopped. I'm just doing it in a different way for myself with my
Mhm.
own platform, which I feel like is so much more powerful. And
Yeah.
also I've attracted my tribe. I am community or in community with other Black women, helping other Black women who aspire to do the same. So, and that feels so good. And for that reason alone, I don't regret it. But yeah, it's always a consideration because I put in, there's the education, the time that I put in, the suffering that I put in. But but I think at a certain point you realize that it's important to be happy now.
Yeah,
And I think somebody mentioned in the comments, it really does affect your mental health. And so you've
absolutely.
got to cut your losses, save yourself, and give yourself the opportunity that you felt you're lacking.
Exactly, because the suffering is not like, well, I put like it's not like you put a deposit down. Like, okay, I did all of my suffering, so that means I'm not going to get any more suffering now. No, it means that it's still going to you're going to continue to suffer. And just like you said, Marley, it may be a different organization, but the same dynamic is going to keep happening. So it's
Mhm.
thinking about, okay, do you want to continue to suffer? You put in all this time, but do you want to continue to do this? Or do you want to say, okay, I'm choosing to choose something different for myself, not to continue to do this because it's going to have a cumulative toll on me. And at a certain point, it's just not worth it, especially when you can make money other ways.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You've got your mental health and your physical health to think about as well, which is
True,
always more important.
true, true, true. And Marley, when you were like working that much, you have no life. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like
None.
you, like, yeah, you have no
No,
life.
I worked every holiday, every evening, every weekend, and I was on call on top of it. I mean, I barely had time to get my hair done. I'd be in the hair salon and get a phone call, and I've got to go and
Wow.
head somewhere and cover a story. So, yeah,
Wow.
it's
Okay.
the type of job that can be definitely all consuming.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, Marley, I'm so thankful for everything you shared today. And it
Thank you
ties
for having me.
directly into why, if you're watching this video, you need to come to the Child Liberation Virtual Summit for Black women, which is May 1st to the 3rd. Again, it's a privacy consideration. You will not be seen on camera. You can attend anonymously. The early registration ends March 31st. So get your ticket before early registration. The ticket information is going across the screen. It's also in the description section on YouTube. So, Marley, I want to give you the last word to share with our community.
Hmm. Well, first, thank you so much for the invite to be on your channel. It's been a pleasure, and I'm so gratified to share my story with everyone, especially Black women. But for my last word, I want to tell Black women to be independent, to be free, to create your own source of income, because at this point in time, it really is a matter of survival. And
True.
so I want to see all Black women start to put something in place for that, because I believe this particular work environment is probably the most unfriendly to Black women that we've seen in a long, long time. And so I want to help Black women be free. And that's my hope and dream for every one of us.
Beautiful. Thank you, Marley. Okay, everyone. So as you're watching this video, please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Marley's channel. It's free, completely free. Also, as I said before, the Job Liberation Virtual Summit tickets are now available. Early registration ends March 31st, so get your ticket today and share this video with at least 2 other Black women. Okay, see you later. Take care, everyone. Bye.